Thanksgiving. You know, it's one of those holidays that feels like it's been the same forever. We think turkey, family, football, and that classic story about the Pilgrims and Native Americans sharing a meal. But what if I told you that the history of this holiday is way more surprising, way more political, and a lot more flexible than any of us learned in school? So let's do this. Let's peel back the layers and uncover the real, hidden history of Thanksgiving.
And just to show you how unsettled this tradition really is, let's start with a kind of wild question. What would happen if the President of the United States just decided to move Thanksgiving? Not for some deep historical reason, but to help people buy more stuff for Christmas. I know it sounds completely made up, right? Well, guess what? It actually happened.
And that drops us right into this bizarre, mostly forgotten story called Franksgiving. See, back in the middle of the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt had a little problem. In 1939, Thanksgiving was going to land on the very last day of November, which left a super short Christmas shopping season. Retailers were panicking.
So with pressure from big stores, FDR just went ahead and declared Thanksgiving would be a week earlier. And the result? Absolute chaos. The entire country literally split down the middle. As you can see here, 22 states went along with the new date, which critics immediately called Democratic Thanksgiving, while 23 other states just refused, sticking to the old date, which they called Republican Thanksgiving. I mean, calendars were total mass, family plans were wrecked, and football schedules were thrown into complete turmoil, all for a few extra shopping days.
So here's the big takeaway from all that. If the date of Thanksgiving, the one day we all gather, could be moved around just to help out department stores, what does that really say about its so-called sacred origins? It shows us that the holiday has always been a kind of tool, one that gets shaped by whatever's happening at the moment, whether that's about the economy or politics.
And that brings us to the image we all know, that 1621 feast at Plymouth. We're taught that it was this beautiful moment of peace and friendship. But, the reality was, well, it was a lot more complicated. It was really all about politics, disease, and just plain survival.
The story we usually get is pretty simple, right? The grateful pilgrims, who were taught how to farm by their new Native American friends, invite them over for a big thank you dinner. It's a really nice story. It's just not really what happened. Okay, so here's the deal. The Wampanoag tribe, led by their chief, Massasoit, was in a really tough spot. European diseases had already wiped out a huge number of their people, which left them super vulnerable to their rivals, the powerful Narragansett tribe. So when they saw these pilgrims show up with their powerful guns, they didn't see friends, they saw potential allies in a high-stakes power struggle. So get this. When the pilgrims started firing their muskets to celebrate their harvest, about 90 Wampanoag warriors showed up armed to the teeth, expecting a fight. It wasn't an invitation, it was a tense investigation. It was only when they realized it was a party, not an attack, that they were welcomed and ended up sticking around for 3 days. And the food? Oh man, just forget everything you see on your dinner table today. There were definitely no mashed potatoes. Potatoes hadn't even made their way up from South America yet. There was no flour or butter, so forget about pie crusts. The feast probably did have some wildfowl, maybe turkey, sure, but it also had a ton of fish, eels, and shellfish, along with a Wampanoag dish, a boiled cornmeal called na samp. Not exactly the Thanksgiving spread we're used to. Okay, so if that 1621 feast wasn't really the start of our modern holiday, then where did it come from? Well, for that, we had to jump forward more than 200 years, and we have to meet the woman who, you could argue, basically invented the Thanksgiving that we all know and celebrate today.
Her name was Sarah Josepha Hale, and she was the incredibly powerful editor of the most popular magazine of the 19th century, Godey's Lady's Book. Seriously, you can think of her as the Martha Stewart or the Oprah of her time. And for decades, she used her huge platform to campaign for one single thing relentlessly, to make Thanksgiving a unified national holiday for all Americans.
See, Hale looked at America and saw a country that was literally fracturing over the issue of slavery. She believed that a shared National Day of Thanks could be a kind of glue to help hold it all together. As she wrote in this letter here, she really thought her home state should lead the charge to make it a national event.
And her long campaign finally landed on the desk of a president who desperately needed a tool for national unity, Abraham Lincoln. He saw her idea and recognized it was a really powerful opportunity.
So in 1863, right in the thick of the Civil War, Lincoln issued his famous Thanksgiving Proclamation. But this was not just some sentimental gesture. Nope, this was a masterful piece of political strategy.
It came right after huge Union victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, and the proclamation was designed to frame the war in moral terms and really to rally a totally exhausted public around the Union cause.
And Lincoln's use of Thanksgiving as a strategic tool, well, that set a huge precedent. From that point on, the holiday would basically go to war, woven again and again into America's military efforts as this powerful symbol of what the soldiers were fighting for.
I mean, just look at World War II. The military launched this thing called the Great Turkey Lift, which was this massive, unbelievable logistical operation to fly over 1.5 million pounds of turkey to soldiers all across Europe. It was this huge, deliberate effort to make sure every single soldier got a little taste of home, even if they were on the front lines.
Now, this tradition is about way more than just a meal. It's a huge morale booster, and it's a way to project American values and resilience. But it's also really important to remember something the military often points out. The holiday doesn't stop the mission. Operations keep going, and that Thanksgiving meal is often just squeezed in between patrols and guard duty.
And all of this brings us right up to today, to the holiday as we know it now. This really complex mix of traditions we love and, well, a whole lot of new controversies. It's a day where the meaning of Thanksgiving is still very much up for debate.
We have the parades, of course. And here's a fun fact. Philadelphia's parade is actually older than the famous Macy's one. Football has been a huge part of the day, ever since the Detroit Lions started their annual game way back in 1934. And, kind of like a modern echo of Thanksgiving, we have the constant debate over Black Friday creep. But the biggest conflict today, it goes right back to the very beginning, to that origin story.
For a lot of Americans, it's still a day about gratitude, family, and harvest. But for many indigenous peoples, it is observed as the National Day of Mourning. This counter-observance, which started back in 1970 in Plymouth, Massachusetts, is an annual protest. It's a day to mourn the genocide of their ancestors and the theft of their lands, and it offers a profoundly different and painful perspective on the exact same historical events.
So when you put it all together, what you see is that Thanksgiving was never just one single static thing. It's not a fixed memory. It's been reshaped by presidents, by magazine editors, by generals, and by protesters. It's a living tradition that is constantly reflecting the country's biggest conflicts and its highest hopes in every single era.
And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. We've seen this day transform from a tense political meeting to a tool of war to a source of deep cultural debate. So, after 400 years of constant nonstop change, what will Thanksgiving mean to all of us tomorrow?